Hello, Internet. It's time for another Wednesday's serial. This one is for mellowmodisty, who's been on my butt, and instead of unsubscribing from me, like he probably should have, has been very kind, been pushing me to do this. So I'm going to talk about Godzilla the Half-Century War. Which is kind of a weird thing for me. I know, like mellowmodisty said, he hasn't really been a fan of Godzilla. The one time I've sat down to really watch a Godzilla film, I fell asleep. Except for the American film, which isn't really considered a Godzilla film as such. So I'm coming at it sideways. I have a friend who's really into Godzilla. Maybe I could get a little more perspective from him. But this comic's different. One thing that is interesting is that it is really very much James Stokoe, I believe is how you say his name's comic. He has some assist with colors and whatnot, but it looks like the entire comic is done and then layered with color and whatnot, meaning he essentially made kind of like a mangaized version that reads American and then had it colored, and that's kind of where that. But I mean, when he did the page, it looks like, I'm not 100%, but it looks like he just made the page, meaning he drew it, he did the story, and he also put in all the lettering and did all that, because this is very clearly hand-lettered, which is something you don't see as much anymore. And so where the way the words are and the sound effects and everything is very much part of the page, which is why I said manga-esque earlier. That's something that you see that tends to play out more in manga, and you pay more attention to it. Occasionally there's elements, of course, in American comics, especially as they've taken a few elements of manga, but anyways, yeah, this feels very much like the way the page is laid out, and the way that the people are drawn, and the style, which is very clearly Japanese influence, as it should be. Yeah, it just has that feel. So anyways, there's that. Also, important note, the first comic takes place in 1954, which is interesting because that's when the first Godzilla movie came out, but apparently the first Godzilla movie was set in 1956 from everything that I've looked at. So, kinda interesting there, thought I'd point that out. So I'm going to butcher this, but we have Lieutenant Oda Miramaki, who encounters Godzilla for the first time, and Kentaro is kind of the one guy who's with him in this one tank, and they just are expecting bad weather, because that kind of plays in Godzilla, which is very akin to like the Hulk in that sort of idea, is that just this reckoning force, and the people encountered see this big green angry thing that's just destroying their city. So he actually handles it pretty well. He notices that the tank can't actually hurt Godzilla, but gets its attention and manages to draw the monster's attention for enough time to save lives, which is kind of an interesting idea, right? Like, the idea of success is such a low bar, and how hard they're working for it is crazy. It makes it really tense, but at the same time, you know, it's like what a good job is so much more harrowing, even though we're dealing with like a complete paragon military type sort of character. So it's interesting stakes, and something you don't see as much of because you can rarely have that kind of line drawn, but it's very a la Godzilla, which is when you look at Godzilla from a certain angle, more than just like, we want to see monsters fight. Like, that's what the movies try to get out, but it's usually too much on the people, but the people usually are boring. These characters are interesting. Yeah, our main guy is, like I said, very military paragon, but he's also somewhat obsessed with Godzilla, because like nothing compares as a threat or an idea. And his buddy is much more sane, like, I guess I'll help out and try to do the right thing, but I don't want to. Like, that's kind of the dichotomy, which is not the most original, but here it works, and it plays, and it makes for an interesting story. Oh, and to come back to it, I just noticed on the second cover, Stokoe is the only name listed where you'd have the creators, so interesting point there. So our second issue is set in Nam, 1967, circa Son of Godzilla. So I don't know if this is actually supposed to be Godzilla or the son of, and then there's also another monster that appears, and that leads to another bit. And so this one's much more action-packed, and there's a cliffhanger at the end which doesn't resonate until you get to the third issue. So if you pick it up and you're kind of lost there, there's a reason for that. So our third issue, set in 1974, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, but Mechagodzilla is not present in the comic, really takes advantage of this idea of all these monsters really being forces of nature. And really, the real monster is a human, you see, who's motivated by greed. Okay. But seeing that go through, and there's this brilliant moment where they get through this huge monster fight, and they're locating this device that's like a beacon for the monsters, a la someone who used to work with them but then sold out, who is the greed-motivated man, who's the monster. And they realize once they get this building that, oh, it's probably guarded. And did anyone bring a gun? And most of them are like, why would I bring a gun if I'm fighting these giant monsters? And it's very on key, and it's very interesting to see like how things are fought are just so different. And it makes for a very different sort of thing, which is very appreciated. Another thing I really would say before sitting down really reading these comics, just flip through the pages, take in the art, because then you'll be able to go and read and actually read it after you've taken the art of it, because it is really the most impressive piece of the book. Not just the art, but the way it's laid out in the whole page. It's very much a cartooning experience, and you get so much more from it for that. So issue 4, 1987, Bombay. I couldn't find that being tied to a movie date or chronologically to any movie where it was set in, so we're really starting to venture into its own territory, I guess. So issue 4 is a powerhouse where we actually do get to see Mechagodzilla. We'll also have a little moment, but the main bit is that we get Godzilla from space, which is apparently Super Saiyan Godzilla they end up fighting. I'm not really worried about spoiling this because it's clearly just set up for our final issue, but things really seem to wind up to this huge thing, and really plays on the idea that these things are forces of nature, but also plays on the idea that they're kind of avatars of the planet, but that implies that this other planet's more powerful. I don't know, it's just crazy, and you need to see it. So I guess thank you, mellowmodisty. This is some different, some weird, and it's definitely like a Godzilla comic that's kind of all its own thing. And yeah, oddly I would recommend checking out once this is in a trade, and I think you could just sit down and enjoy this in the afternoon, because it really reads like, the issues are chapters, which is nice, so that's nice for issue to issue, but it's very much just this one, its own thing, and it's just kind of a story to be told. So yeah, so that's it for now. Final issue isn't even out yet, but you could check it out. This is one comic I had to essentially get digitally, so I had to do that, which kind of makes paying the $3.99 too much. But I thought I'd try it with one mini-series to really experience that, so that I could do a video or two that I plan on getting to sometime when I have more time to gestate on that. Yeah. So rock on. It only took me months, but if you have a comic request, you know, let me know. Might take me forever, apparently. But yeah, rock on.